Okay, but you've got more in Ukraine then?
Well, yes, and we'll start off with the commander-in-chief in the United States. Here he is, and he has been tweeting up a storm on Truth Social. This is a truth. I think they call them truths now. He calls them truths, not
Really?
tweets. He says, I'm happy with Russia's.
No, I'm not happy.
I'm not happy with Russia's strikes on Kiev. Not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop. 5,000 soldiers a week are dying. Let's get the peace deal done. I mean, this is such an embarrassment to have the president tweeting out stuff like this. It humiliates the country. It's not good for him, and he's sabotaging his own peace negotiations. Plus, Chinese are looking at this. Moscow's looking at this. And by the way, the Iranians are also looking at this. And let me tell you, they're not impressed. Forget about the Europeans. That's a different story here. But on the point you were saying, Mike, while there's all this hawkish talk coming from Europe, from Britain about the coalition of the willing, this is the reality. Here we are. The UK, this is in the Times, this is just yesterday, in fact, the UK could scrap plans to send thousands of troops to Ukraine. British sources said that it was deemed too risky to send ground forces because the risk of a wider conflict if the ceasefire deal with Russia breaks down, and it looks like it is. And so let's look at this for a moment here. There they are, Mike. That is the coalition of the willing. It's great that they borrowed that title because it certainly doesn't have any bad connotations from the past. There it is. But unfortunately, it's disintegrating. And as every day and every week goes by, they put on a big, brave front, didn't they? Remember?
Right.
Last month, real tough talk, especially from Mette Frederiksen and the Euro Coven there. There's a few members. I won't put Giorgia Meloni in that category because she seems to be a lot more reasonable. But Ursula certainly is lurking in the background, whispering into Keir Starmer and Macron's shoulder here. But as they disintegrate, and there they are. That is effectively, this is the new coalition of the willing. You're looking at it right there.
All three of them. Yeah.
The three of them. That's it. But this is what the Times also reported. Sir Keir Starmer and President Macron have offered to deploy troops to Ukraine to keep the peace as part of the coalition of the willing during talks in London. Sources told the Times there appeared to be a softening of the commitment. So the rowing back is beginning. Isn't that interesting?
Because who have they got to send?
Well, this is another thing. What sort of battalions can Britain or France really deploy, and where would they send them? And they would actually be definitely legitimate targets. And again, that's the reminder here. Russia has warned that it will consider such a troop presence as a NATO deployment. Underline that point, please. And under the guise of peacekeeping or otherwise, it will treat it as a, quote, valid military target. So that's not us saying that. That's what the Russian Federation's saying. So it'll behoove you to listen to what they're saying, especially if you're sending your boys into a hostile environment where maybe diplomacy might be a better option. That's just me. I'm old-fashioned. I believe in diplomacy. But meanwhile, the propaganda rolls on. And talk about Orwellian. Look at this. The Telegraph is spending its money wisely, buying up ad space in the UK, Mike, here. And this is what they're saying. There's a bit of fear-mongering here. Ever heard of Riga, Tallinn, or Vilnius? If we abandon Kiev, you will, says the Telegraph.
Wow. That's sheer propaganda. That's not journalism. What are they playing at?
This is Orwellian, but this is this is beyond Orwellian, Mike. This is Starship Troopers level propaganda here. Unbelievable from the Telegraph. So you know what their stance is. They want to see this war go. It's been good for their business, I guess. But let's look at why is this rowing back happening, Mike? Why? Maybe it has something to do with this. Ukraine fails to reach a deal with, quote, investors. I'm going to say receivers, but we'll say investors, to restructure $2.6 billion of debt. Kiev is due to make an estimated $600 million payment on GDP warrants next month. So financing the debt, interest payments are due. This is the big question, though, here, Mike. Who is going to pick up the dinner bill? Do you see anybody lining up wanting to pay for this?
Right.
Or is this going to have to be bundled into some sort of new debt package? So that's the operative question, ladies and gentlemen. Who's going to pick up the dinner bill? And I can tell you right now, it's definitely not going to be these guys. German authorities slash economic growth forecast for 2025 to a whopping 0%. That is the supposed industrial powerhouse, the engine of the EU, the thing that makes the ECB run. Germany, 0% growth. For the first time in modern history, Germany's economy is set to stagnate for 3 consecutive years, a scenario unseen even during World War II. The humiliation of self-hating Germany continues even within the EU. Mercedes-Benz has also announced plans to cut jobs in Germany and relocate them to Hungary. So Orban is laughing all the way to the election polls next election. So look at this. Hungary, by the way, did not reject Russian fuel, making production therefore more cost effective. That's Mats Nilsson from Sweden, great geopolitical analyst. So nobody is really gagging to take up the slack on Ukraine here. Back to Kit Klarenberg, Mike. So high-level Ukraine peace talks in London scratched after the U.S. pull out. So the U.S. is threatening to pull out. And so what happened? They canceled it. Where is this coalition of the willing? Where are they? Are they anywhere without the United States? Are they really willing to go toe-to-toe with Russia? Or has this all been a big front? That's the question. But the cracks don't stop there, Mike. Look at this. It gets worse. Donald Trump's move on the Russia-occupied Crimea forces Europe to choose sides. U.S. has offered to recognize the annexation of Crimea. Wow. And this has created huge problems. A senior European diplomat told the Financial Times that it would be, quote, impossible to accept the U.S. proposal to recognize Russia's annexation of Crimea. Other EU officials claim that Crimea and future NATO membership aspirations are red lines for us. That's a non-starter. So where can you go from here? This is basically status quo. We're reverting to status quo. The proxy war continues, but without the United States. How much mileage does Europe actually have in this? This is the legit question. NATO membership, I highly doubt it. Now, NBC sent a reporter to Crimea. This is fairly recent. Watch this clip. These are people in Crimea. They went around and did vox pops, and this was the answer.
Is Crimea Russian or Ukrainian?
Russian,
Crimea
конечно.
is Russian.
Да.
Of course Russian. 73-year-old Praxovia tells me. Zelensky will not get Crimea back because we have our commander-in-chief, Putin.
Глава команды, Putin.
Every one of them told us that they are Russian and that if President Zelensky thinks Ukrainian forces can come here, they will fight them. President Zelensky has said that the Ukraine war started here and it will end here. But no one was able to tell us how it will end and how much more blood will be spilt.
And we're told that NBC reporter got put on a Ukraine hit list after he issued this report, which broadcast on U.S. TV. So that's not going to help U.S. support for Ukraine either. It's probably a USAID-funded hit list, by the way. But Mike, the recognition of Crimea is really important because that's what sanctions are tied to. A lot of U.S. and EU sanctions are tied to Crimea. And if the U.S. recognizes Crimea as part of Russia, that's going to nullify a lot of U.S. sanctions, but it's also going to put pressure on Europe to reevaluate. Are they going to go against the United States on the recognition of Crimea? I mean, this could be a massive international problem in terms of international relations here. But it doesn't end there, and we'll continue here. Oops, sorry, I jumped ahead. The ICC, International Criminal Court arrest warrant is invalid in Italy. There was a filing error, it turns out. So as it stands right now, Vladimir Putin could go to Italy and not be arrested under this ICC case. And by the way, back to the Grayzone on that ICC case here, this is a fantastic piece of journalism that a lot of people missed. This was in March 31st, 2023. The ICC's Putin arrest warrant is based on a State Department-funded document that has been totally debunked. They issued this arrest warrant against Vladimir Putin and his commissioner for children's rights, Maria Lvova-Belova, accusing them of, quote, unlawful deportation of thousands of Ukrainian children to a network of camps inside Russia. It turns out that the warrant, the case at the ICC, was based on a shoddy report by Nathaniel Raymond at the Yale University Human Rights Center, and is funded by the U.S. State Department. A completely bogus report. I have looked into this myself, and it's pretty shocking how bad it is. Yale based all of their research on satellite data, telegram postings, and Russian media reports, relying on Google Translate to interpret them. And they say they admit their work does not conduct any ground level investigation and therefore did not request access to any of these, quote, camps. Jeremy Lafredo, the journalist who did this with Max Blumenthal, turns out these were places where families would send their kids to get them out of the war zone. And of course, in the Donbass regions, there'll be more Russian residents, Russian speaking. So this is the basis of the ICC case, Mike. I mean, make up your own mind. I encourage people to go to the Grayzone and look at the reports for yourself.
And the links will be in the show notes.